Welcome to Mysteries to Die For and this toe tag. I am TG Wolff and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is normally a podcast where we combine storytelling with original music to put you at the heart of a mystery. Today is a bonus episode that we call a toe tag. It's the first chapter from a fresh release in the mystery, crime, or thriller genre. And today's featured release is Bazaar by Miles Joyner. Okay, so today we are going to read the first chapter and about half of the second chapter. We'll talk about why after. Chapter 1. The only lighting inside the dark room was a couple of red LED lamps. They didn't bother the eyesight of 18-year-old Aaron Williams, who was wide-eyed in fascination at his Ultramarker XT 3D printer going to work. The last of the white filament flew out of the extruder onto the print bed, and he couldn't have felt more like a father watching his wife through the glass, holding their newborn baby. He reached onto the platform and gripped his new plastic handgun that shot real metal bullets. Like its predecessors, the Mini Talon had been banned from all sites hosting 3D printing design files. However, Aaron was able to obtain it through torrents online, and now he had the opportunity to add it to his family of firearms that lay around the room, including an assault rifle with a lower receiver printed from the same material. But unlike the rest of its siblings, the MT wouldn't be one of Aaron's toys to fire rounds off at tree targets somewhere deep in the woods. Some of the former models exploded on test from the videos Aaron watched online, but he was confident the new version would not fail to take out his intended target in a few days with its untraceable ballistics. Danny would be his escape. The son of a local faux restaurant owner was Aaron's only friend outside the digital realm. Danny Pfatt took very little seriously in life, but for all the flaws, he knew every back road of the entire DC, Maryland, Virginia area. He could whip his raggedy-ass decade-old Nissan Altima pretty well. Either way, Aaron had no driver's license, and he wouldn't risk getting pulled over or traced to a rideshare app. The young 21st century gunsmith couldn't take his eyes off his latest creation. He loaded a magazine, cocked the weapon, and listened satisfyingly to the crisp click. It blew Aaron's mind to think the ammunition clip had fit perfectly into the gun made from the same material as his storage cabinet. He was ready to test the gun. Would it fire smoothly? He had 2 days to test it and find out before he had to execute his assigned job. August 20th, 2024, 1:30 a.m., Washington, D.C. Liquor-induced shrieks and screams of laughter carried over the bass thumps throughout the bumping Adams-Morgan, the corridor of D.C. that served as one of the city's nightlife hotspots. Neon lights shined on the designer brand, clean-cut, modern-day yuppies who strut out of the nightclubs and the plaid-shirted, bearded hipsters who stumbled out of their brewing taverns. A lot were on their nights off from studying, but the cost of drinks was far higher than college town prices, so the professional class, of everyone from policy aides to software engineers, got just as wasted. Regardless of education or socioeconomic background, many women looked for their best friend whom they lost in the partying, and many male counterparts hoped to be that lucky dude that they might have run off with. Isaiah knew that's what his best friend, Adamu Atta, wanted to be at that moment. But it was past last call, and Isaiah had put pressure on him for them to start heading back to the university dorms. He could tell Adamu didn't get it. The youngest patriarch of a politically rich Atta family from Nigeria had no issues getting cheeks back home. But American girls apparently weren't as impressed with his super forward approach. Isaiah tried to explain this to Adamu outside the Astro Lounge on 18th Street, with neither a female around his arm nor a single new contact in his phone. But before he could bother to listen, a tipsy trio of curvy young women strolled out after him and caught his eye. Long braids, luscious shapes formed from their lacquer dresses, flawless different shades of ebony skin, Isaiah just knew Adamu would try again. Hey! The bells reluctantly turned toward the source of the attempt at a mating call. Where are we going tonight? Nowhere that involves ugly. The tallest out of the three formed a smirk under her glasses. Her 2 graduate degrees having only enhanced a life's worth of sharp rebuttals to catcalling in her neighborhood. She laughed, and the pack began to leave the scene. No different than a kid eyeing the milk chocolate bar before the checkout, Isaiah knew Adamu just couldn't take no for an answer. The shorter one, with the most voluptuous figure, became the unlucky winner to have her hand grabbed without permission. Come on, mammy, ditch these bitches! Adamu was snatched mid-sentence by a bouncer whose neck rolls formed a poop emoji and got tossed like a rag doll into the hands of Isaiah a few feet away. Dumbass, screamed the short one as the three marched off down the street. I'm royalty, hoes! Some other bitch will get blessed with this big dick tonight. Hey! The head of Astro Lounge security had enough. So had Isaiah. I'm so sorry, sir. He's drunk. Get him the fuck out of here before I break his jaw. Yes, sir. Again, I'm sorry. The situation was all too familiar to Isaiah. Except now, instead of guiding a destroyed Adamu down a terrapin-flagged residential streets of College Park, Maryland, from one frat house to another, they had graduated to bar hopping in D.C., where the young bachelor had been able to finally drink legally for the past 90 minutes. Sometimes you're a freaking embarrassment, Adamu. Shut the hell up and get an Uber. We're going to Starline. Starline? Strip club. Adamu gulped down a wad of vomit from coming out. Isaiah looked away in disgust, but something else caught his eye as they turned the corner. A Metro bus stop bench rested 30 yards from their position. He figured that was where they could gather themselves after such a night. He used the remainder of his stamina to finally reach the bench and slap the back of Adamu to the hard rubber as if trying to wake him up. Isaiah checked his phone. 2% battery. Damn it! Adamu! His eyes opened, barely able to comprehend where he was at, let alone be able to give Isaiah a response. Your phone. Mine's about to die. Body in total slow motion, Adamu managed to tap his pockets. Shit, eked out of Adamu's mouth. What? Isaiah tapped his friend's pockets. Where is it? Or your wallet? Another tap. Wow. Alcohol and a night of partying caused his buddy to lose track of his valuables. Unbelievable. What the hell is wrong with you? This isn't St. Catherine's anymore. Isaiah yelled at him, referencing their boarding school back in Victoria Island. Vomit rose through his esophagus, except Isaiah could tell from the lump in Adamu's throat that this batch was going full projectile. Isaiah jumped out of the way, right in time for only a chunk to get on his shoes. The rest of Adamu's day intake became a red-yellow puddle at the side of the bench. The gross sight, as well as the realization that their options were fading, prompted Isaiah to throw a fist and scream a few fucks to himself. He looked up at the bus stop sign and saw that the 92 bus had a destination of Shaw Howard, a metro station. Maybe the route was their best bet if a bus got there within 15 minutes and they made the last train, figured Isaiah as he composed himself. He looked away, and something else caught his eye. Several blocks down Marion Street walked a hooded figure. Not too brisk, but certainly with a purpose, right for their position. Isaiah squinted, and the street lamps revealed a teenager in a dark blue hoodie with jeans. The getup, time of night, and even the location were enough for Isaiah's nerves to merge into his skin. Yeah, they were in the, quote, nice part of D.C., but Isaiah's classmates had been robbed on campus, so it could happen anywhere. The young male got closer. When he was within 30 feet away, Isaiah was still unsure of how to react or whether to react at all. The feeling might have been what his student counselor emphasized as overthinking. Come on now, shifting foot to foot, Isaiah sunk his hands deep into his pockets, a reflex move he made whenever he was nervous. At the same time, he heard his parents' judgmental bias about inner-city youth, fighting to stave off his own similar thoughts. Hey, bro, the figure said once he reached the bus stop. They traded sup nods. Isaiah was way more reserved. My phone's dead. You got the time? Mine's dead too. Sorry. Hate when that happens out of nowhere. Isaiah started to ease up to the source of the voice that seemed extra friendly with a hint of anxiety. The jitters he noticed from the kid were probably from him panicking over his phone being dead, figured Isaiah. Something he clearly could relate to given his own situation. The original image shaped in his head was starting to look too judgmental. The teenager looked at Adamo, who hung over the bench, motionless and barely conscious. I'd ask him, but he looks done. Yeah, he lost his at the club. Long night. Isaiah gandered at his friend draped over the bench, now sharing sympathy with his comrade. Ah, so that's why the phone is dead. He had it out the whole time booking them females. Can't even be mad at him. Not even, laughed Isaiah, trying to shake off whatever anxiety he had left. Word. Y'all heading to Howard? Nah, we go to Maryland, trying to figure out way back, actually. Shit, I'm in the same position. You know where the closest metro is? Wonder if we can make the last train. The sign, Isaiah remembered. They just had to keep walking down Marion. Yeah, I think... Pop, pop! The friend of the target was not getting up from the 2 caliber bullets that were just blasted through his skull with the utmost precision and professionalism. Aaron didn't waste a beat as he tactically shifted the open sights of his plastic 3D printed pistol to a groggy Adamo, struggling to get his words out. Please, he cried. I don't have my wallet, but I can give you anything. I'm rich as fuck, I swear. Pop. 3 total gunshots. The first one might have caught attention, but the second one was supposed to send any potential eyewitnesses running. At least, that's what Aaron learned from observing a few shootings he witnessed around his way. Aaron stowed his pistol away in the waistband holster. He checked the surroundings for the 5th time that night. There was no sign of anybody. He picked the right spot and predicted Adamu's every move since the club perfectly. But where the hell was Danny? His Ultima was supposed to be turning the corner before the first shot. Vroom! Screech! There it was, revved and making too much damn noise as it peeled from an alleyway to scoop Aaron. The passenger door flew open and Aaron jumped in. They took off before any sirens could be heard. Woo! Yelled Danny as he whipped around another corner. The two dressed pretty similar, but everything Danny did was exaggerated in an attempt to blend into the projects they were headed to. Everything from the commander's fitted hat to his foam post pressed against the gas pedal contrasted with the plainer attire of Aaron, who didn't care at all about the brands his former classmates worshipped on a daily basis. Fool, you a beast! Aaron needed a moment to gather himself. Despite his success so far, taking someone's life for the first time was a difficult realization to settle into, let alone 2 lives. His parents never intended to raise a killer. His dyslexia limited the options the school offered him. Danny's advice about selling drugs or sketchy affiliate marketing plans wasn't a solution either. He knew what would end up to him down that familiar path. He also took note of how naive Danny's hype was in the latest additions to the district's homicide rate. You were late, was the first thing out of Aaron's mouth. Chill, fam. Traffic around the corner was OC. Stop acting like I ain't doing my job. Aaron's eyes just rolled in response. Maybe if it was another debate at Danny's spot about Harden versus Curry over some french fries dressed in mambo sauce, he'd entertain the bickering. But not after carrying out his first homicide. He wanted silence. But yeah, Slim, you did the damn thing. How much did those lames have on him anyway? Real life starving in this bitch. Aaron's eyes widened. Unbeknownst to Danny, Aaron was supposed to make it look like a robbery. Shit, he said. I forgot to run through their pockets. What the fuck you mean you forgot? Nigger, what was the whole point of tonight? I still got you, and I told you not to use that word around me. I'ma call you a whole lot of other things if you don't get my bread, motherfucker. Fuck type shit you think this is. Danny, shut up! Please! Aaron didn't yell often, but the authentic rage in his voice shut down whatever gangster persona Danny was going for. By then, Aaron knew Danny finally realized it wasn't just another discussion about NBA playoffs. "Just get us to PG," Aaron said. PG was the county of their home right outside the nation's capital, Prince George's. "Stop somewhere and I'll cover, but I can't talk right now." Nothing but the sound of road bumps and the night traffic until Danny began to piece together a hint as to what the real motivation for the night had been. "Aaron," Danny had to hit pause for a moment. "Are you saying this was a hit?" Aaron didn't care to answer Danny's curiosity. He stared at the nightlit city outside the car window. He had just clocked out, and there was no desire to talk about work. The murder of Adamu happened 2 hours after midnight, meaning his death landed on the date Aaron had bet on the assassination market called the Bazaar. Chapter 2. Yemi arrived at the metro station and was greeted by the same familiar good morning smell of cannabis and urine that marked his commute every day. The bright spot was that he didn't have to wait long, as the Green Line train was already pulling up to the platform. He was still several stops from La Font Plaza, where he would transfer to the Silver, when he received an incoming call. "Did you get my text?" asked Yemi immediately, once he slid the green phone icon. "File on all 4 of them will be ready by the time you get off," the voice of a young woman replied to him. Yemi heard a loud slap, like the sound of 2 kitchen mitts slamming together, while he spotted a flash blur of motion from the side of his face. He took notice of an urban professional in headphones, tensed up like something had just hit the stomach area of his purple Ralph Lauren polo. Next to him, retracting his arm into his body, was a man with a sloppy white turban complementing his disheveled, mostly white amalgamation of robe and loose shirt plus pants combo. The man was in some type of trance, muttering a language that Yemi had never heard before. But Yemi didn't need to make sense of anything he was saying to realize he had just hit the kid wearing the headphones. "Yemi?" asked the woman over the phone. "Do you know him?" Yemi asked the young man, who shook his head no. "Know who? What are you talking about?" "Not you," Yemi said back to his sister. The man in the white rose out of his seat just as he had sat in and started a dazed shuffle to Yemi's side of the card. His motion was somewhere between a religious praise dancer and a drunk usher performance. He took a step toward Yemi and got within a couple of feet of him, his back against the metro map. He was in a position quite similar to when he struck the man in headphones. "One sec, Karen." "Yemi?" He dropped the call. The Liberian tribal reject was over 6 foot, and while maybe not athletic, he wasn't crystal meth skinny either. Yemi launched out of his seat. "Back up now!" His new adversary immediately took some steps back while he muttered in his inaudible language. "Sit the fuck down!" Yemi continued to order him. The man did as he was told, but Yemi could tell, even his delusional state, that he was still full of enough pride to continue antagonizing his more diesel foe. The man removed something from his pocket. It was bright orange, and Yemi thought it could have been anywhere from a bright-colored flashlight to a travel-sized container of detergent. But a blade soon protruded from its end, and Yemi recognized it as a box cutter from Home Depot. The man was 3 feet away across from him and started to slice the air and make threatening gestures toward Yemi. Still talking in his faux foreign language, it looked like a character from a 1970s kung fu flick getting ready to strike his opponent, but in a seated position. Yemi kept his eyes glued on the threat. The train suddenly stopped. "There is a medical emergency on the Hyattsville crossing platform," the conductor voiced over the intercom. "We've been told to hold." There was about to be a medical emergency right here, Yemi thought. The only question was who would be leaving this train car on an EMT's gurney. He was always open to his daily routine having an exciting tangent every so often, but being stuck on a metro car engaged in a standoff with an armed man sick in the head who had already assaulted someone would be the last thing he wanted on his agenda. The man continued to violently cut the air. Yemi had his eyes on him, but his mind was racing through the different options of action. The intercom button to alert the conductor must have been on the opposite side of the car, since he didn't see it anywhere near their automatic double doors. Walking away to find another seat on the end was the smarter decision anyway. However, the savior accomplice was itching at him to stay put to ensure the rest of his fellow passengers were safe. No matter how much his career went in the direction of gathering intelligence instead of directly protecting the public, those instincts were still present. No matter how much his career went in the direction of gathering intelligence instead of directly protecting the public, those instincts were still present, no matter how much Yemi tried to convince himself that he didn't care anymore. Yemi's lack of verbal response or action seemed to entice the man to rise up. The passengers in the rows parallel to Yemi bolted from their seats, but a young Latino family of 3 behind the knife-wielding man was trapped in the corner of the car. Yemi could tell the father wanted his family safe, but he could tell the man was resorting to a cowering position and wasn't sure how to respond to active threats. Yemi knew then that he had to take action. The man in white rambled some more in his faux language, and Yemi looked for openings in the man's wide haymaker-like swipes, slicing through the air, but he stayed seated. The man then turned 90 degrees and was only a couple of feet from the Latino man's toddler daughter. Yemi had seen enough. Yemi had never taken a formal martial arts class, but he knew a kick to the back of the knee would force him to collapse. The man had barely turned 90 degrees, but Yemi had his foot planted in the middle of the man's hamstring and had the man's wrist locked in a firm grasp within a few moments. Having control of the man in white's weapon hand, Yemi used his free left to quickly grab his head through the turban and smash the man's face into the metal bar of the metro seat, right in front of the entire family. "Go," Yemi ordered to the family as he shifted his head in the left direction. A tooth went flying from the man's mouth at the same time Yemi heard the knife drop to the floor. The loose denture didn't hit any of the family, but the mother and father of the daughter leapt out of the seat, grabbing their little girl with them to escape. Yemi used his arm to hold the top back of the man's neck to keep him pinned against the bar, and he didn't see her flinch once. Once the family was out of the way, Yemi picked his head up and slammed the man against the bar again. "Please, brother," Yemi could finally hear English from the man's voice, even with the metal-pressed face. His voice sounded less like surrender and more like a man admitting to being the victim of his demons. "I'm just a crackhead. I'm sorry." "Do you need help?" asked Yemi. Yemi kept the same grip on him, but eased a bit up once the blade was kicked away. What kind of help?" the man pleaded. "I can't stay in the ward or any of those places, man." The train finally started to move. "Next station," the intercom announced. "La Femme Plaza." Yemi patted down both sides of the man in white. No other objects seemed to be on him. "You and I are getting off at the next stop," Yemi said down to him. He looked down the car to make sure the family had made it to the opposite end of the car. They did. The man and woman faced toward the front of the car, but the daughter, wrapped around her mother's neck, stared back at Yemi, to the point that they even made eye contact. He focused back on the man. "I'm going to call to get you help, but I'll let you go. It's up to you if you stay." He could feel the man in white give a few heaves through his lungs. The silence provided enough of an answer for Yemi to know how to wrap up the situation. He would just text Karen an update from the platform. It took an additional 20 minutes to get from La Femme Plaza to Northern Virginia on the metro. The Tyson's Corner skyline used to impress and motivate Yemi in the early days of the countless times he's taken these trips. He remembered the streets of Lagos on the tail of rapidly moving kidnapping cartels, and its itch at him to return to the work that made him feel alive. But as he saw downtown Tyson's at 8 in the morning, welcoming his entry, he decided he was going to try to enjoy the sight of the closest thing to a mini East Coast Silicon Valley. Whenever he entered Titus HQ, Yemi would see the same bohemian security guard, Orlando, almost every morning. Yemi had noticed that Orlando was never the one responsible for watching the baggage scanner. "Peas and rice, man. Been telling you," snickered Orlando as he took Yemi's laptop bag from the conveyor belt. "Jollof by itself just doesn't cut it. You gotta put some protein in there to give it any taste." Yemi chuckled as he went through the body scanner. Orlando had dragged on this, quote, debate for weeks, and by debate, it was mostly just the security guard trying to assert West Indian cultural superiority over the motherland. Not even in the mood today, he grabbed his stuff. Let's just admit we'd both rather be back home. Shit, I hear you on that. Police were baffled by the double murder on Marion Street. The first 12 hours of it was a robbery gone wrong after nothing was found on the second victim. By the following day, it was revealed that Astro Lounge handed over Adamu's iPhone 15 and the wallet found in the bathroom by one of the bouncers. That made 2 bodies, 2 wallets, 2 phones, 3 bullets, and no motive or leads. Adamu clearly got into trouble that night, yet all trails to any possible suspect were cold. Even though Yemi had not have identified the killer, he knew the fertile ground in which the roots of murder were placed. Yemi was 100% certain it was the first major homicide in the United States to be tied to Bazaar.tour, a marketplace on the dark web that listed bids for predicted death dates to various figures ranging from conservative politicians caught in a massage parlor after lobbying against prostitution to liberal pop stars who pissed off the wrong tax bracket. Such concepts were nothing but academic thesis until the Adamu Atta killing. Yemi's office at Titus didn't differ much at all from his studio apartment. Plain, no attempt to reflect his personality, just the tools to get his job done. Multiple computer monitors revealed months of intense research. Some carry-out containers littered the desk and the trash bin. Yemi had seen the first half of Fight Club, but he knew it was a privilege to even be able to clock into a guaranteed income. His father always reminded the 2 children about how their upper-middle-class upbringing in Rockville, Maryland, was a far cry from the poverty-stricken Niger Delta he had grown up in. Yemi's co-workers were friendly people for the most part. Kenny Simmons, the new junior consultant who had been promoted from intern, pushed the limits sometimes with his Lion King reference and other stereotypical African jibes. Kenny and Jacob, the other junior, were the Black/Asian Beavis and Butthead of the Titus Strategic Development Wing. A couple of knocks on the door and Yemi already knew who it was. The 25-year-old walked into Yemi's space without permission. Kenny gandered at the computer monitors, seeing the Bazaar list. A daily attack, huh? Some of the open tabs were somewhat on the sensational side of headlines. As Yemi had come to find, it was only the individual renegade journalists or road bloggers who began to connect Adamu's murder to the Bazaar. From Kenny's attitude, it seemed he had the same assertion about their credibility the mainstream outlets did. Fake news shit. Yemi rolled his eyes at the kid's voluntary ignorance and continued to work. Kenny looked around the room's decor. Didn't you say you've been here for almost a year? Why does it feel like a cell block with Wi-Fi in here? Can I help you with something, Kenny? Yemi was not easy to offend, but he didn't even bat an eye from gathering his documents together. But he wasn't going to let Kenny get away with throwing zingers freely on a day that important. Oh, no, I'm just saying. Kenny backtracked, knowing he had just come close to crossing that line. I'm just saying we're the same breed, brother. Driven. No days off in this corporate jungle. Feel me? In Yemi's eyes, those types of statements with empty ambition didn't warrant a response. He continued to get ready for the presentation. Kenny saw the ID badge with the Raptor logo next to one of the computers. He took notice of the logo, the face of a hawk, staring right at him. Never understood that. What? Asked Yemi. Raptor. Why didn't your sister call it Falcon or Eagle Security or something if she wanted that logo? Raptor also means bird of prey. You know, the thing velociraptors evolved into? Oh, right. Where did she get the capital anyway? Investors. Yemi kept it brief in answering the shallow questions. You finally got enough people to believe that you're a prince after all those emails? Kenny smirked as Yemi stopped his work in motion. The joyous smile on the naive kid faded as Yemi looked up, his eyes piercing through Kenny's soul. He crossed the line. Big time. Yemi knew that Kenny knew he wouldn't be able to take on the older Yemi in a mental or physical battle. "Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "Get your clowning office out of my office," Yemi scoffed with laughter. A visibly shaken Kenny pretended to laugh along with the return prank, but Yemi could sense it was hard for Kenny to hide the fear that was generated in him for those few seconds. You getting breakfast?" "Yeah, just give me a second." It's able to avoid prosecution from law enforcement because, in legal terms, it's still just a prediction market. Now, given the proximity of so many international VIPs, I predict the Washington, D.C. area to be one of the top 5 global cities that will be impacted by Bazaar, along with cities like New York, Istanbul, Hong Kong, and Dubai. Yemi quipped in the dark room, only lit up by the PowerPoint. It switched to the next slide, a heavily zoomed-in graphic of Adamu's Bazaar listing. I believe the murder of Adamu Atta over the weekend was linked to this marketplace. A slide of an online news posting from the website afrileaks.org with the big bold headline, "The Atta Popko Files," loaded up next. According to the popular whistleblower site, AfriLinks, when Cheeto was serving his term as ambassador, he gave the oil company Popco a little too much leeway in domestic policy. Initially, this pissed off the Biafra Freedom Movement, who I think put the first bid down, as it seems they might not always be trying to gamble on boat raids on the Nigerian Delta. But you see, click, a Venn diagram followed with several different groups that all had interest in killing Atta. One circled was labeled the Anat Network. Since 2 weeks ago, the economic activity of the Bazaar has multiplied 12 times more than it ever has been in its 4-year existence. And over 70% of new waves of income I've traced are sources connected to the Anat Network. Everyone in the conference room was familiar with the Anat Network, given that some of their friends were actively waging a covert war against their offshoots in the Middle East. Although a minority religion, was a movement that outpaced Islam, Christianity, and Judaism in the international growth. The followers found themselves marginalized in the nations of the dominant belief system, and what started as a resistant movement soon turned into another excuse warlords used to pacify populations into submission. Of course, the majority of sadists opposed the blatant terrorists such as the Anat Network, and most notorious of the fundamental factions. The Anat Network was a big global push to have the world run under harsh religious law and pursued an aggressive mass internet promotion strategy. Yet, despite all the social media accounts and video channels attached to their name, they proved quite adept at constantly evading capture from counter-terrorist operators. I'm positive that they're the ones who infused the capital into targeting the entire family of Chitu. The Bitcoin value on his head has tripled in just the past week. With the completion of the Atta homicide, I'm sure they see it as a new source of income. "So this is going to turn DC into some kind of war zone or something." The comment came from young Jacob, who quickly slid his Galaxy back into his pocket, wasting data on another LinkedIn flex, and not a care in the world for the data Yemi was presenting. DC's always been a war zone. The follow-up to Yemi's answer was senior consultant Kirk Fitzgerald. "Just this time it's not just in Southeast," remarked Kenny, next to Jacob. "Or Congress," added Kirk. The last statement spurred some obligatory chuckles from the rest of the group in his age. Kirk nodded for his colleague Yemi to continue. "Local groups with connections overseas may get orders from a superior to ensure that a prediction goes through. This creates an ample opportunity for specifically trained private security teams to offer local protection for 24 hours on dates our research point to being the highest value." Kurt clapped first, and a low-scale applause filled the room of 8. Even if everyone didn't pay full attention, it was the future direction of the company, at least for Kirk's division. "Lights, Jacob." Kirk caught the nephew of his supervisor on the phone. If only HR could see the brat whom they gave the position to over one of his far more qualified Marine Corps buddies. He wondered. That embarrassed Jacob quickly abided and switched the switch. Mind-blowing stuff, Yemi. Really, I think I've heard enough to take this to the next level. Does anyone have any further questions for Mr. Uzunma? Nope. No, great presentation, Yemi. Good, I should have something in everyone's inbox by tomorrow morning, stated Kirk. The meeting was adjourned. Tysons, Virginia. A model for what a edge city was supposed to be, of skyscrapers, foot traffic, and accessibility. Not even 50 years prior, Tysons Corner was a parking lot added to farmland. The checks from the politically tied bureaucrats 20 miles away had turned it into a hub of activity that Yemi had belonged to for the past couple of years. He looked out the window onto the downtown business district of the suburb and realized it may be the last time he would have that view from the 14th floor if he stuck with his decision. The purified water out of the cone cup had never tasted so good. An elevator ding from the center of the lobby interrupted his reflection. He heard the voice of Ted, one of the attendees of his presentation. I'm telling you, this place will blow your mind. They're opening up one in the Olney. I'm sure you're fucking sick of the Y by now. Yemi went to get another refill. He was parched today, more than usual. The conversation swung from around the corner of the elevator walls. Ted was talking to Kurt, whose body language suggested he was mostly an unwilling listener through their dialogue. Kurt spotted Yemi, the man he probably was much more eager to speak with. Basketball courts, Krav Maga classes, a cafe with a full keto menu. You get all that with the Platinum membership. But look, just come check it out. I can get you a free day pass. Ted, do your own thing, man. Just stick to this one for more than 2 weeks, for Christ's sake. Yemi watched Kurt shove Ted in his jelly roll beneath his chest. Ted couldn't help but laugh at his constant failure to convince Kurt of any of his lifestyle choices. I gotta talk with Yemi. I'll slack with you within an hour. They bumped their fists and split. Kurt nodded his head toward Yemi excitedly. It was time to take the executive protection market to a whole new sophisticated level never seen before on this side of the Western world. Kurt had already gotten a text confirming their first possible client worth millions. This murder had scared some in the high echelons of the DC power structure who found themselves or family members on the dark web through their private connections. The Bazaar was no longer just a subject for a Vice documentary. It was the real deal, and it created opportunities for real money on all sides of the law. This is what I live for, honestly, Kirk said as he slapped his comrade on the back in solidarity. We could just be any two guys in a corner of a mall somewhere with some trade school dropouts and still land these kinds of contracts based on your research alone. Yemi smirked and nodded, but not saying a word, doing his best to share his superior's excitement. Kirk has always supported him. That fact and the current mood made the inevitable incoming news harder to deliver than it already was. Yemi needed another gulp of water before he could respond. But here it is, at Titus. We're connected, so inside the Beltway, I think sometimes we're a subdivision of Homeland Security. A pause between them, but Kurt stayed smiling. Yemi figured his presentation was the best news his superior had heard all week. How's Karen? Kurt asked. She got a handle on things over there? Yeah, chuckled Yemi. He may have had enough water, finally. Was she part of some 30 under 30 thing I saw online recently? Yep, Yemi said. Forbes. That's crazy, Kirk said as he made his way to the same 5-gallon fountain. You, though, you're a busy man yourself, and it's about to get a whole lot busier. The team is going to be all yours, brother, Yemi said. Huh? Kirk jerked around from the fountain. All mine? How is that possible when you're the reason this is all happening? Give yourself a little credit, man. Yemi could tell Kirk was reading that he didn't see the same common groove that they'd always share after small victories. I'm sorry, this is last minute, but I'm going full-time at Raptor, and due to unforeseen reasons, Today will be my last day." Kurt took a 180-degree turn. He wasn't even able to lift the cup of filtered water to his mouth as he tried to process the new information. "You're starting your own squad? Over there, aren't you?" "We're in totally different markets," Yemi said. "That's not what I asked." Kurt stopped himself. Both he and Yemi knew taking things too personally could burn a bridge that could always be crossed in the future from either direction. "Sorry, I didn't mean—" "Perfectly fine. Your frustration is understandable given my timing." Yemi watched Kurt nod his head to get his focus together and finally take a sip. "Well, it's hard to believe Titus is going to begin this journey without its hardest working consultant. Nevertheless," Kurt stuck his hand out and Yemi gladly took it, "I wish you and your sister the best in your endeavor." "Thank you," Yemi said. "I want you to know that this is a very difficult decision to make. I can't imagine being where I am without our efforts." But in reality, Titus had felt like a cage, and Yemi, he yearned to fly again. "I'm confident the two of you will succeed, but if anything doesn't go as planned, there'll always be a spot here for you. Same with Karen." It was hard to tell whether Kurt was being genuine or if he thought Yemi was going to launch his entrepreneurial parachute only to crash land back in Titus within a year. But out of respect for his former partner, Yemi gave him an assuring head nod. Their friendship was still intact. "We never hung out outside of this place. I have to introduce you to my family sometime. You know, if it's not too awkward, given that we're going to be competitors and all." The two shared grins. Beneath the smile was the shared knowledge that there was a better chance of balancing the national deficit than that ever happening. But once again, no love was lost. "Anyways, time to go entertain some boring-ass emails from the board. Take care, Yemi." "You too, Kurt." Kurt left Yemi to finish his self-reflection at the end of the chapter for his new career. He stared one more time back out to the tallest buildings in Northern Virginia. He knew someone like Kenny or Jacob looked at the same thing every day, dreaming of owning it all, and speeding out of the parking garage to hit the I-495 in a Porsche Boxster. Such shallow ambitions, Yemi thought. They would never be a Sun Tzu or a John Boyd. They would never push the boundaries of strategic intelligence in the field of international security, blinded by their material greed. They were going to end up being another two useless cogs in the machine by the time they were his age, and that was only if the taxpayer was still clueless enough to be footing their salary. He gulped the water down and tossed the cup into the recycling bin. He hoped the new venture would be able to pay off Karen's student debt, though. Unbeknownst to Kirk, the actual headquarters of Raptor was close to what he joked about being the corner of a mall somewhere. The Greenbelt Shopping Plaza had 6 occupants left when Raptor moved in. There was the check cashing place, which had been the most consistent business there. The International Latin Market had steady, loyal customers and managed to stay around for 5 years. The restaurants, though, they were always changing. Another Peruvian chicken spot to add to the dozens in Prince George's County became the tenant beneath Raptor's office. One space was vacant, having been an Ethiopian coffee shop that failed to attract any of the runoff from the nearby University of Maryland. Raptor rented out the outdated top-floor suite, converted from a tax office whose accountant passed away from a stroke a year prior. Yemi had never been happier to pull into the desolate parking lot. Karen mentioned in a text that she and Jasper had narrowed the search down to 4 candidates for the squad positions. Jasper Kidanu was Yemi's closest friend, and it was Jasper who introduced the siblings to the potential for Bazaar for the security market in the DC area. Jasper's background was in Ethiopia Intelligence Agency, the NISS, and he came to the west side of Africa to assist Yemi in counter-terrorist operations when the Boko Haram situation was out of control. When the Titus opportunity arrived at Yemi's feet and Karen wanted to launch Raptor, he decided to bring along Jasper to the States. It turned out that 28-year-old Karen wouldn't have even survived the first 6 months of entrepreneurship without the strategic expertise of Jasper. At the moment, they were just a small firm, patrolling garages and warehouse facilities, but their head was above water, according to Yemi. With the new executive protection team, they could finally jump ahead of the DC market with their knowledge of the Bazaar. While the exterior wasn't dilapidated in the slightest, the inside Raptor HQ might as well have belonged to a private investigator, Thomas Magnum, from the 1980s. Yemi made his way through the disorganized file cabinets and peeling tables to join Karen and Jasper in the Mac meeting room, eating Chinese. "There he is," said Jasper, with a mouthful of lo mein. He swallowed before continuing. "The man with the plan to get us rich." "Define rich," Yemi responded as he sat in motion for some of the takeout. He then glanced toward Karen. "You know what? I like what your boyfriend Isaac said about money." "Oh, God." Karen shielded her face behind chopsticks. "Don't do this, Yemi." Jasper laughed, amused. "Who's Isaac?" "Old boyfriend of hers from Wake Forest days. Rasta man. Babylon dangles the gold in our face he stole from under our feet." Jasper and Yemi laughed at Yemi's exaggerated accent when he landed on the word Babylon. "Okay, right now, you're forgetting I cut your check. At least part-time," said Karen, even as she couldn't help but smile at a bit of her own past. "Nope." Yemi bit a piece of General Tso's and swallowed. "Full-time, as of today." The room was in shock for a brief moment at the realization that Yemi quit Titus. Jasper had been trying to convince Yemi to follow his intuition for months, but didn't know Yemi was going to go through with it. Karen, on the other hand, was hoping Yemi would use his former employer as some kind of middleman for their future clients. The siblings always had differences in this arena. Even though they both were eager for their startup to take off, Karen had dreamed for the past 4 years of looking out her floor-to-ceiling windows onto the packed K Street corridor before she clocked out and rode the Red Line to her quaint condo in Columbia Heights. Several of her classmates built the life she envied through their summer internships in D.C. in between semesters, while Karen sweltered in Carolina heat, helping her boyfriend plant community gardens to provide food security for low-income communities. Isaac dropped out his sophomore year, and his jealousy after her graduation turned toxic. Eventually, Yemi visited Winston-Salem to explain to Isaac that Karen wasn't one of the vegetables in his plant beds, and if he laid a finger on her, Yemi would make sure his corpse served as next season's fertilizer. Karen left him, but ended up with a sociology degree in her parents' basement. Yemi watched her shed whatever rigid lifestyle idealism Isaac painted in her mind and even considered interning at Titus, while maybe going to grad school, until she saw the subsidies for minority-owned businesses in the county of the house she had grown up in. When she became a blurb in a blog about women of color in private security industry, it lit another fire under her to explore uncharted territory with her brother leading an executive protection squad. "I thought you said Kirk was interested in a possible collaboration." "It's never really a collaboration," Yemi said, "with behemoths like Titus. Plus, they would never let me command my own squad." Yemi enjoyed his meal as Karen came to the realization that stubbornness was a family trait. But Yemi, specifically, had never liked someone outside of the bloodline taking charge of his future. "Better this way," he said. "Trust me. It's more ideal to be small and efficient nowadays." All right, so that is the first chapter and half of the second chapter from Bazaar by Miles Joyner. So here is the full review. So Bazaar is a techno-thriller. On the dark web, a new type of gambling is emerging, betting on the death dates of the rich, famous, and politically powerful. Two men see opportunity. Yemi, who you met in Chapter 2, and his sister Karen see a need for a new breed of personal security force, a need their security company, Raptor, can fill. Aaron Williams, you met him in the first chapter, sees a solution to his money problems, and all he needs is his 3D printer. As the betting pool grows, Yemi's and Aaron's squads face off, with one trying to protect and the other trying to kill the prize. The bottom line, Bazaar is for you if you like your thrills hinged on technology, with an element of lion versus tiger. Okay, so let's talk about the book a little bit. The premise and the storytelling are the shining stars of Bazaar. It is a seldom read mix of high-tech and street smart. The leading characters are interesting, and those again are the three that you've just met, Yemi and Karen and Aaron. And it does lead to being invested in their outcomes. This is a shoot-'em-up action story, and those scenes are intense. The actions on both sides are inventive, and it kept this reader engaged. Bazaar is a unique story because the storyline is really driven by the online betting arena, with both Yemi and Aaron reacting to it. Yemi is hired by people at the top of the prize pool, and yes, once he and Karen accept the job, they do drive Raptor's protection and planning and the execution of that planning. Similarly, once Aaron accepts the challenge, he largely drives the planning and execution for his team. Aaron and Yemi do not know each other. There is no personal animosity, there is no back history. It is simply business. Yemi or Aaron could have stopped what they were doing, and this storyline would have continued. A lot of times when we look at that, if the lead character would have stopped, the story would have ended. But this is one where it would have continued as long as Bazaar was up and functioning. Standing at the end and looking to the front, the logic largely stands up. Yemi's and Aaron's actions make sense given what they know. As you heard, we hear the stories from their not first person, but from their point of view, as well as a few other narrators. I did end the book with questions that are not resolved, though, on the page. The one area where I struggled was with the unconventional formatting. I found myself frequently confused about who was speaking when it came to reading the dialogue. Actually, as I read it to you all, it made a lot more sense than when I was reading it on a page, and I have the wrong voices in my head. The result was that I had to read slowly. I often reread passages, and it did slow down the pace of the story, especially in the shoot-'em-up scenes. Readers who read quickly, you might find this distracting, but you may rewrite over it and never notice it exists. Whether you're reading fast or slow, this is a sophisticated story that can't be raced through. All in all, Bazaar was a satisfying read and an excellent addition to the thriller and technothriller genres. Bazaar was released from World Castle Publishing and is promoted by Partners in Crime Tours. It is available from Amazon and other online book retailers. Links are in the show notes. About Miles Joyner. A lifelong fiction writer, Miles turned to penning novels after nearly a decade of holding various producer-editor roles in the DC area media industry. He still pursues filmmaking in between books and finds that writing in the thriller genre only enhances that passion even more. Miles is an active member of the International Thriller Writers, where his novel, Bazaar, was selected for ITW's debut author program. He also attends monthly meetings for novels in Progress DC. I think that's supposed to be read. He also attends monthly meetings for Novels in Progress DC, not a place. Wondering what to read after you finish Bazaar? Partners in Crime Tours is your ultimate destination for all things mystery, crime, thriller, and cozy. Since 2011, they've been working to fill bookshelves with gripping and heart-pounding reads. Discover new mystery series and connect with your fans on Partners in Crime. Look up Partners in Crime Tours on the web or your favorite social media. Link is in the show notes. See, that is singular, link. And authors, whether you're looking to promote your latest thriller, discover a new mystery series, or connect with fellow fans of a genre, PICT has you covered. Check out their promotion options that come with the personal attention of a dedicated coordinator. Join us next week for our next episode in Season 8, Anything But Murder. A strange art theft is our murderless crime. Was it the Vermeer? All right, Jack, take us out.